Hello again. I'm going to speak pretty loosely about this topic because it's one that grammarians and linguists could argue about all day. But the purpose of this first section is to educate the layman. You don't need to know the controversies of comparative linguistics. You need to know what you're working with in English, and the term that works best for you is determiners, despite any arguments that they're not a real thing. Determiners is an umbrella term for groups of words with different functions. You may have heard of some of them. Articles, for example, a, an, and the are determiners. They're words that come before a noun to connect that noun to what it's referencing. It helps to describe or better identify the noun. I like the cat, I like those cats, I like her cats. Consider this your warning. If you are allergic to cats, this section may kill you. We're actually lucky because English determiners always come before the noun. That's a consistency not all languages can lay claim to. So since we always know where the determiner goes, we just need to look at what kind of information a determiner can provide. We'll start with the easiest and get harder. First are the possessive determiners, which tell us to whom or what the noun belongs. My cat, your cat, our cats. Next are quantifiers. They tell us the general quantity. No cats, few cats, some cats, many cats. The distributive determiners designate individuals. Each cat is amazing. Every cat can live with me. English demonstrative determiners are used to provide location-specific information in reference to something else, like the speaker or the listener. This cat is mine. Those cats are also mine. Interrogative determiners hold the space for another determiner requesting information to fill the void. They ask the question, whose cat? Which cat? The last set of determiners are the first I mentioned in this video, but are by far the worst for English learners. Articles. English articles signify specificity and whether the noun is singular or plural. A cat, the cats, and the null article, cats. There are 20-some exceptions for articles, like mountain ranges always take the, but individual mountains don't. The Andes, but Mount Everest. Rivers require the, but never lakes, like the Amazon, but Lake Baikal. Some countries need the, while others would sound like fantasy monsters with an article. The United States is okay, but better get your sword and shield before the Namibia and the Ecuador arrive. Practice makes perfect with articles, but luckily native speakers know the difference on instinct. One fellow teacher will only ever gloss over the topic with students. She says there's too many exceptions and they'll never be perfect if we have other things to focus on. And she has a fair point. So if the little word before the noun helps you identify the noun, it's a determiner. But sometimes it doesn't appear at all. Got it? Of course you do. Moving on. Now that the laymen are filled in, I really gotta say this was a rough topic to pin down. My initial idea was to focus just on articles, but once I started to discuss the null article situation, it became difficult to not discuss quantifiers. And if I'm going to talk about quantifiers, I might as well talk about demonstratives, and down the rabbit hole I fell. But the term determiner is iffy when you realize that it came from an English linguist applying English grammar rules to all other languages. It's so Westernly biased and Anglo-centric because so many languages that aren't Romance or Germanic don't overlap these categories in the same way. That being said, let's talk about the controversies of English determiners. The arguments about determiners is how to categorize each of them. The largest disagreement is whether determiners are just adjectives. They come before nouns, they describe the noun, so they're adjectives, right? Well, if they're adjectives, we should be able to use them in all the same ways we can use adjectives. But there are environments where the two can't be swapped. I can say most of the cats, but not beautiful of the cats. I can say your cats are beautiful, but not your cats are most. But there are some determiners that do behave like adjectives. Many of the cats, your cats are many. Another conflict here is that while determiners like to agree in definiteness and number, adjectives don't. Adjectives can inflect for the comparative and superlative, but there are gradable determinators like less and least, few and fewest. Adjectives can take ly to become adverbs, determiners can't. So is most a determiner when it can become mostly? This is a lot. I haven't covered it all because if you're like me at this point, you just don't care. The linguistic community has its panties in a twist over words that can have multiple functions. But language isn't cut and dry, get over it. This isn't to say the discussion isn't important. This is a great example of any theoretical science with differing opinions. The argument can lead to something greater, something that hasn't been discovered yet. For determiners, what we see as words having different semantic functions could actually be governed by an underlying rule that hasn't yet been ripped from the brain guts of universal grammar or some other theory. And there's so much more to dissect, but for our purposes, this is enough. I will not be discussing the discourse around determiner spreading or determiner phrases versus noun phrases, but feel free to fall down that wiki hole if you want to hang yourself from a syntax tree. As for other languages, they're all different. Some languages allow multiple determiners where English would only allow one. Others need redundant determiners, one before the noun and one after, to be grammatically correct. This article by the Uppsala group demonstrates the complexity. They focus mainly on English, German, and Czech, but to see how they vary, especially between two languages that are so similar, like English and German, proves that this is so language-specific, I'll never be able to cover it all in a 10-minute YouTube video. And Conlangers. Considering I just said the intricacies don't warrant discussion here, how could I possibly have anything to add for Conlangers? How can they benefit from a topic I'm flat out refusing to pick apart? Determiners are complex, and when designing a language, the author is the only authority on the intricacies. It's up to you to decide how detailed and complex the language is. One cautionary note is to ensure you're not just copying your first language's grammar. So the word most in English can be an adjective, adverb, pronoun, and determiner. Are you sure that's what you want in your conlang? Every time you create a determiner, make sure to clarify what function it's serving in the sentence. Put it in other contexts. Is it doing the same thing? It's fine if it does, read English, but that choice should be intentional and not happenstance. You also shouldn't copy another language's system for things like articles. Both English and Spanish have articles that occur in the same environments, but the requirements for when they are needed is different. Also, how many are there? There can be 0 or 200. If it's 0, how does the language compensate for the lack of specificity in number? That's where the other determiners come in. Do the demonstratives work for definiteness, like Mandarin and some sign languages? Is there an existential determiner to express the indefinite, like any? Speaking of demonstratives, how many distances can they express? English has only near and far in relation to the speaker, but there are languages that express distance to the listener as well, or distance from both the speaker and the listener. How many degrees of distance are there? I'm touching it. I could touch it. I can't reach it. It's frickin' far. One determiner we don't hear anymore in English is yonder, and it's special because it doesn't show number like this and these. It's similar to my favorite kind of demonstratives, which indicate if the object can be seen. It's that thing over there yonder hills we can't see, but we know it's there. Also, don't just focus on lateral distance. What about up and down? Is it uphill or downhill? What is it currently doing? Sitting, standing, moving? Is it dead? Does it even exist anymore? Did it ever? And then once you've figured all that out, you have to decide if they inflect for number or gender or case, like German's crazy system. So, determiners. Not so easy to determine. If you don't have a headache, like and subscribe. I need a nap.